Greetings. Welcome to the third of 3 introductory videos to the 724-page poem entitled Savitri, written by Sri Aurobindo, which I have recorded for you here on YouTube. Now you should probably watch the first 2 introductory videos first, so this will make a little bit more sense. So this last fallacy I'll be exposing is the belief that all pain is self-created. Sri Aurobindo took this for granted, and he stated it clearly in the poem. You did it to yourself. He believed that whatever suffering, misery, agony, torture, heartache, rape, betrayal, disease, injustice, enslavement, or any other misfortune you experience, you wished for it, you caused it, you created it yourself on a spiritual level. Even critters and children. He believed that spirit enjoys everything that can possibly be enjoyed, including pain, and that karma is the vehicle for that enjoyment. So this type of belief has become all the rage among millions of New Age neo-shamans who are all actually neo-Hindus but don't know it. Fundamentalist Hinduism and traditional shamanism are not the same, and they do not share this sadomasochistic cosmology, regardless of popularity, and regardless of what a few self-proclaimed white-bread shamans wrote about in a book. Nobody ever believed this kind of thing while they were being beaten, raped, tortured, hunted, crushed, burned, bombed, shot, starved, terrified, enslaved, or whatever. They may have believed something like this afterwards, if they survived, as a way to separate themselves from other victims so they could feel safe again, but not while it was happening. And no sane human being has ever witnessed a child being raped and brutalized and thought to themselves, that kid's spirit is really having a blast there. She wanted to experience this soul-crushing misery to expand her spiritual horizons. She's creating her own reality through the karmic vehicle of savage, violent rape. How convenient for the rapists. This is one more extrapolation of the fallacy that spirit and matter are opposites. Right? In the physical world, a violent act against an innocent victim is just that. The perpetrator created the violence and the victim endured it. But according to this belief, on a spiritual level, the victim created the violence and the perpetrator is the innocent vehicle for that spiritual creation. What? On the physical plane, you are responsible for what you do to the world, but on a spiritual plane, you are responsible for what the world does to you. Really? On the physical plane, you barely control your own life, but on a spiritual plane, you control your whole universe. Are you kidding me? And here's one from the other religions. On the physical plane, a father who tortures his own son to death is a psychotic monster, but on a spiritual plane, a father who tortures his own son to death is a loving deity. Are you out of your mind? Physical and spiritual opposites. Absolute nonsense. So your physical body is a separate temporary thing interacting with the world. Your spiritual soul is a spaceless, timeless, undifferentiated awareness experiencing the world through your body. Interdependent, not opposite. Your limited body receives awareness from spirit. Your limitless spirit receives individual perspective from your body. The physical is separation needing connection to survive. The spiritual is connection needing interaction to perceive. Something like that. Volumes could be written about this stuff. So how it really works is on a physical plane, you know what you do to others. On a spiritual plane, you feel what you do to others. You nourish your own spiritual needs by nourishing others' physical needs. And on, interdependent, complementary, reciprocal, interactive, interconnected. It's Mama and Papa, not war and peace. So compassion for the suffering of others is genuine spirituality. The more depth and height of that compassion, the more spiritual is the individual. On the other hand, esoteric explanations about suffering are corrupted spirituality. They're spirituality influenced by fear. Explanation replaces compassion. So where did this explanation originate? From the psychic realms. It was communicated into individuals while they were in a trance, deeply in prayer, under extreme duress, or dead, having a near-death experience. Sri Aurobindo heard this while he was in a trance, after hearing it from his guru and reading it in a holy book or two. And it never occurred to him to question it. He never questioned anything that came to him from the psychic realms. But for me, in 20 plus years of doing shamanic work, I've learned that most communication that comes from the psychic realms, including near-death communication, is simply whatever individuals need to hear and experience at the time they are receiving that communication to make them feel all better. Psychic communication is not necessarily fact or accuracy in the physical sense. It is mostly therapeutic intervention in the form of words and scenes and feelings that reduce anxiety, enliven hope, and make people feel empowered, special, and so on. It reduces fear and increases happiness. In many cases, this communication simply validates what people already believe, because that is what they need at the time. Now, I have observed many folks who are told things from the psychic realms about health issues, love issues, or financial issues that were patently false. The predictions did not manifest and could not manifest because of the life circumstances of those individuals. Then why did they hear it? Because it made them feel much, much better at the time they were hearing it. That is all it was, nothing more. But then they blamed themselves when their health or relationships or money continued to deteriorate, as if they were thinking bad thoughts that were making it all happen. So being punished for thinking bad thoughts, blaming the victim. Does that sound familiar? Now, the supernatural divine love that some folks experience in these states comes from a place completely devoid of pain or fear, from heaven. That heavenly place, which I have also experienced in trance, is beautiful beyond words, because it is a place of rest, free from all pain, as it is being experienced. A few folks who've had near-death experiences have been told while they were in this heaven that they planned their entire life before they were born. Why did they hear this? Because it made them feel like they were back in control. It eliminated their fear. They had just died, gone to heaven, but were being sent back here. This ain't heaven. What else would they hear? Did all beings plan their lives in this way? Is there any other evidence to support this? Is it even possible to rationally plan a painful life from a place where pain has no meaning? Did torture victims plan their own torture beforehand? Did all writhing critters in all corporate slaughterhouses plan their own agony? Did the millions of slowly starving children plan the months of utter hopelessness and gut-burning diarrhea they experience as they slowly dry up and wither away? Is all pain self-created? All of it? I have observed that this type of belief very quickly becomes an addiction for the believers, as do all fundamentalist beliefs. Hanging on to a feeling or memory of heaven, feeling special, safe, and powerful, knowing they are finally in control of their lives, the spiritual elite, living in a perfect universe, privy to esoteric truths that us riffraff are just not able to comprehend. Sound familiar? On the one hand, this helps them avoid being overwhelmed by all the misery in the world, convinced that it is all divine and self-created. But on the other hand, it eliminates any depth of compassion or empathy they would otherwise develop in their lives. It's kind of like psychic sedation. And it also eliminates any motivation to collectively do something about the underlying causes of misery, which is the addictions of our owners. So I have seen this happen to several folks I know personally. During their youth, they were filled with compassion for the suffering in the world and outrage at the psychos in power causing most of it. If they'd been allowed to evolve naturally as they grew, that compassion would have eventually taken on a transcendent quality, a height and depth that might even be perceived as supernatural. But every one of them, during a time of desperation, was systematically seduced by the New Age movement. Instead of pushing through the difficulties involved in developing their compassion into something powerful, they were completely derailed during their period of fearful vulnerability by an addictive neo-fundamentalism that made everything perfect just as it is and made them feel like they were once again in control. Suddenly there was no reason to feel any depth of compassion, since all suffering is divine and or self-created. If we interfere with the suffering, we are violating the spiritual process of the sufferer. I was actually told that by a New Age practitioner. Once that philosophy was adopted, they stopped growing. They lost their passion for justice. They digressed further and further into make-believe, developed personal addictions which interfered with finding a mate, began to actually believe the government, and as a result of becoming separated spiritually from the truly suffering lives on earth, they became isolated from their own true self, a deeply compassionate human being. That is what most, not all, what most people are born as, deeply compassionate human beings. So where did this all come from? The original theory of karma was communicated mostly as a means to produce compassion for livestock. Believe it or not, this was back BC. The teaching was that those critters may be ancestors from past lives, so they should not be beaten or slaughtered while they're still alive and so forth. Critters feel pain too. It was later expanded to include people, that people may be ancestors from past lives, so they should not be beaten or slaughtered in wars and so forth. But later still, the aristocracy of India inverted the idea to suit their own purposes, just as all ruling classes from all places and all times always modify all religions to suit their purposes. There are no exceptions to this, including New Age religions. But in this case, the inverted ideology was spread through India via the Hindu religion. Instead of condemning cruelty to slaves because they may be ancestors from past lives, Now the slaves, the untouchables, were taught that they created their own slavery through their own past life karma. How convenient for the slave owners. Instead of opposing cruelty, now cruelty became the spiritual creation of the victims. The opposite of the original teaching, which was then refined over the centuries into its present New Age science fiction Project Monarch format, which encourages believers to indirectly blame the victims while imagining themselves the knowers of higher knowledge. It happened to them because of their karma. It won't happen to us until it does. As usual, man-made religion replaces human compassion for political purposes, completely unbeknownst to the faithful. However, this addictive S&M cosmology is exactly what Sri Aurobindo needed to believe in order to perfect his unprecedented integral yoga without being distracted by other people's pain and so on. His belief, as stated in the poem, was that everything positive is positive and everything negative is secretly positive. So everything is positive, but everything must be transcended to reach the highest positive, which can never fully be achieved, and this process continues forever. If he did not believe this stuff, he would not have been able to maintain his devotion, or his discipline, or his focus, or his celibacy, right? An actual celibate, not a pedophile masquerading as one. He wouldn't have been able to maintain all that throughout all those decades of writing his amazing poem and perfecting his supernatural yoga, which he did. When Sri Aurobindo died, his body emitted a faint luminescence for 3 days. He was the original Yoda. So he deified pain and death, as do all fundamentalists, right? Look at a crucifix. But he also transcended pain and death and communicated that transcendence into the poem Savitri. The poem is more than a poem because it is so intimately integrated with his integral yoga. It imparted a spiritual strength and protection to me as long as I was reading it, and this gave me time and space to begin recovering from my very severe PTSD. That's another story. The beneficial aspect of Savitri's fundamentalism is the absolute belief that all evil must and will be transmuted into good. That this transmutation process is a law of reality as sure as a law of gravity. This belief/natural law was integrated into his yoga, communicated into the poem, broadcast into reality upon his death, and made real in my life through the healing I received as I read Savitri. It helped me tremendously in spite of the victim-blaming aspects. In fact, a part of the healing came from me holding my own as I read the poem. It's like, yes, you are a super genius, but no, this belief is not accurate. Any belief that suppresses your natural human compassion is a mistake. So this concludes my introduction to the 724-page poem entitled Savitri, written by Sri Aurobindo, which I have recorded for you here on YouTube. I guarantee many benefits from interacting with this poem regardless of its fallacies. As I said in the first introductory video, you do not need to believe his assertions in order to benefit greatly from the superintelligence which poeticized those assertions from the higher realms, which Sri Aurobindo transcended into when he wrote his poetry. Now, my own experience of those higher realms seemed like an interaction with living beings that are millions of years ahead of humans in their evolution. That's what it seemed like to me. Yoga can put you in touch with them, and so can reading or listening to this poem. At the very least, listening to it in bed, along with some hypnotic music, may help you sleep deeply and dream creatively. So please like and share. Please like and share. Thank you. Thank you very much.